The Iroquois were a league or confederacy of tribes in the northeastern part of America. Originally, they were formed by 5 tribes: the Cayuga, Onondaga, Mohawk, Seneca, and the Oneida. Later in the 1700s, the Tuscarora tribe joined. The French named them the Iroquois, but they called themselves the Haudenosaunee, which means people of the Longhouse. The British called them the Five Nations. The 2 tribes we will be focusing on are the Iroquois and Huron tribe.
In the Iroquoian First Nation, it included 9 principal tribes, which are the Huron, Tobacco Nation, also known as Pentun, the Neutral, the Erie, and the Iroquois. But the Iroquois had a confederacy of 5, but now 6 tribes, which are the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Cayuga, the Seneca, and the Tuscarora. The Iroquois Confederacy operated under a council of 50 sachems representing the 5 original tribes. The council was a legislative, executive, and judicial body that deliberated only on the external affairs of the Confederacy, such as peace and war, and on matters common to the 5 constituent tribes. The council had no voice in the internal affairs of the separate tribes. Tribal representation on the council was unequally distributed among the 5 tribes, although abuse of power was limited by the requirement that all council decisions had to be unanimous. The Huron-Wendat Nation was an association of Iroquois-speaking groups. They were divided into 4 main tribes: the Bear Tribe, the Core Tribe, the Rock Tribe, and the Deer Tribe. A chief of a clan segment initiated tribal councils. Before traveling to the meeting, each clan would choose their position on the matter to be discussed. All clan segment chiefs would attend an annual Confederacy Council. They would discuss common war and defense plans, and renew and strengthen ties between nations.
There are 10 main Iroquois languages: Cayuga, Cherokee, Huron, Mingo, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Seneca, Tuscarora, and Wendat. Wyandot, traditionally spoken by the people known as Wyandot or the Huron, is already extinct. However, there are attempts at revitalization. Wendic was the term used by the Wendat for their traditional homeland. Huron territory was surrounded by the waters of southeastern Georgian Bay and lakes Couchiching and Simcoe, with various rivers and interior lakes. In Canada, most Huron ancestors live on the Wendic Reserve near Quebec City. Iroquois territory covers parts of Ontario and extends from east to west in what is now New York State. Their landscape greatly impacted the vegetation they harvested, as well as the game they hunted, the clothing they wore, and their methods of transportation.
For the Huron tribe, their crops were their main source of food. Corn, squash, and beans were staples in the Huron diet. They also farmed tobacco, mainly for trade, and sunflower. They would also hunt bear and deer and other animals and fish for whitefish. The Iroquois were well known for agricultural skills. It was partly due to the practice of planting crops like corn, beans, and squash, sometimes known as the Three Sisters, together to encourage growth. Other foods important to the Iroquois were found in woods around them: hickory nuts, butternuts, chestnuts, acorns, berries, and several kinds of roots. Meats and certain vegetables were cooked over a wood fire on an open hearth. The women of the tribe also gathered wild berries and roots, greens, barks, sunflower, nuts, and herbs for both cooking and for medicine. In early spring, they tapped the sap from maple trees and turned it into maple syrup. The men were gone during the winter months hunting deer, elk, wild turkey, beaver, fowl, and other woodland animals. Being so close to the St. Lawrence River, they also relied heavily on fishing as a constant source of food. They caught several types of fish, including salmon, trout, and bass.
Wendat clothing were very different to the clothing we wear now. Wendat clothing was made from deer and beaver hides. Men wore loincloths and moccasins daily. In winter, they added leggings and sleeves and a cloak made of fur. Men wore fire pouches on their backs in which they carried tobacco pipes, charms, and other personal belongings. Women dressed the same way, but instead wore a skirt rather than a loincloth. The Wendat also wore body paint and beads, and red was a favorite color. They also used porcupine quills and feathers for decoration. Women wore ornamental bone combs in their hair. Wampum made of shells, bones, and glass beads was another popular decoration. In the winter, the men added a smock that went down to their knees for warmth. They also decorated their clothes with dyed porcupine quills. The women wore their hair long. Warriors wore their hair in a mohawk, a wide strip of hair left down in the middle of their head. Also, both men and women decorated their bodies with tattoos. Families lived in longhouses, windowless structures between 25 and 30 meters long and 6 to 9 meters wide and high. Longhouses were made of poles bent over to form an arbor, which was then covered with bark and saplings. There were low doors at each end, and usually a porch where food and wood were stored. Holes in the roof let smoke out and light in. Fireplaces, usually about 6 meters apart, served two families. The Iroquois, also known as the Haudenosaunee, lived in longhouses. The Haudenosaunee can be translated to people of the longhouse. An average longhouse accommodated 6 families. Each family consisted of a woman, her daughters or sisters, and their husbands and children. In the longhouse, the women had influence on the male leaders. Women were guardians of the family and of village traditions. They also had a long list of duties: cooking, sewing and tanning leather, childcare, gathering food, making baskets and pots, and more. The Wendat men aspired to be brave warriors, good hunters and fishermen, and clever traders. They also tried to earn reputations for generosity, good advice, and good speech making. The men of each village took care of clearing new fields, hunting, fishing and storing the fish, making stone and wooden utensils, and more. Girls helped their mothers with their work. Boys were expected to be hardy, brave, and self-reliant. From an early age, boys would cut and burn themselves to prepare for future tests of their courage and manhood. Based on the clan system, families start with a female ancestor, with all those dwelling in her longhouse linking back to her. All female descendants, including her sisters' daughters, and their daughters, would live in the longhouse their entire lives, bringing their husbands to. The women tended the gardens and harvested the crops. Women raised the kids, made clothes, cooked food, and prepared food for storage. They were the gatherers. gathering wild fruits and vegetables. The men cleared the fields and built and repaired the longhouses. Other than that, their time was spent in trading and hunting, and in war and preparing for war. Children learned from their parents, uncles, and aunts. Girls helped their mothers. Boys helped their fathers. Both played games to strengthen their bodies and skill. In the Huron-Wendat tribe, transportation was very important. It was so important in this clan because they had to chase animals to get food, and they also had to travel to go to Quebec when the Iroquois tribe flushed them out of their homes. Canoes were usually made out of birch bark and elm bark because they mostly lived around those type of trees. They also made snowshoes and sleds for the winter. Dogs were also a very valuable form of transportation in this tribe. A dog could carry packs or pull a specifically designed sled called a travois. Just like the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee used canoes, snowshoes, and dog packs to travel.
Shamans were also greatly a part of Aboriginal spirituality. There were four kinds of shaman: those in control of wind, rain, and weather, those able to predict the future, those able to find lost objects, and those able to heal the sick. The shaman worked with drugs and herbal remedies and mask or shell rattles. Shaman, both men and women, were highly paid and highly respected. The Iroquois people carry out 6 major ceremonies during the year. These are maple, planting, strawberry, green corn, harvest, and midwinter or New Year's festival. One of the major ceremonies for the Huron was the Feast of the Dead. Whenever a large village shifted location about every 10 to 15 years, the bodies of all the temporary tombs were buried in a common ossuary, a deep pit lined with beaver robes. The ceremony expressed the great affection the Huron held for their dead relatives and exercised a powerful reinforcement of the alliances among the tribes and villages. The final burial was believed to release the souls of the dead and allow them to travel westward to the land of Luskeha and Atensik lived. The Iroquoian midwinter ceremony celebration takes place in either January or February of each year, depending on the lunar cycle. Each of the 6 tribes of the Iroquois Confederacy take part in the ceremony. The midwinter ceremony cannot officially begin until a group of masked messengers, called the Big Heads, visit a tribe's longhouse. The Big Heads dress in ceremonial outfits. Their costumes symbolize both the hunt and the harvest. The first ritual for all of the tribes of the 6 nations is the stirring of the ashes. The ritual involves the Big Heads visiting the houses within the village and using their corn mashing mallets to stir up ashes in the fires of each household. Stirring the ashes is a symbolic act of gratitude to the Creator. The next part of the midwinter ceremony is tobacco invocation. This ritual involves the sprinkling of tobacco on the burning embers that are left over from the stirring of the ashes. After that is the dream sharing ritual. It is a way to get rid of troubled thoughts and to make wishes come true. For dreams that evoke the notion of illness, either physical or mental, the dreamers are referred to False Face Society, the group of Iroquois medicine men in search of a cure. They perform a variety of healing rituals for those individuals in the tribe that were deemed ill during the dream-sharing ritual. Another ritual used during the midwinter ceremony, keeping with the theme of cleansing and healing, was the bear dance. Lumbering and waddling was used to mimic a bear as they danced counterclockwise in a circle. They believed that the dance would help cure the people of their problems and misfortunes. Next was the Peachstone game, said to symbolize the game played by the Creator and his evil brother in a competition during the creation of the earth. The traditional celebration of the midwinter ceremony involved a sacrificial rite of the killing of a white dog. Today, rather than sacrificing a dog, the Iroquois use a white basket as a substitute for this ritual.